have for Nacho Leber. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open. Usually you guys have lots of contributions. Maybe a question, maybe an observation, perhaps a complaint, perhaps a kudo. Can you have a singular kudo? Because plural would be kudos, right? One kudo is okay, correct?
I think you could give Ben a kudo. I'll give him a kudo off the top.
64686, you got something for him?
Well, I heard it during Talking Points today. He did a very nice job outlining what Jacksonville was doing and what that was allowing the Vikings to do should they choose to accept it. And on cue, T.J. Hawkinson caught like 6 first-down passes in a row. Now, they threw an interception at the end of the drive, but Leber's analysis there was spot on. There's
Leber,
a kudo.
That's the place where we want to start. I, again, don't ever want to discourage getting the ball to the best receiver in the league. That's foolish, right? There's no question about that. But I have a nagging concern and fear that part of what is generating the sudden propensity for Sam Darnold to turn the ball over, something he has done over the course of his career, is too much of a desire to get the ball to JJ. And, there's a balancing act. Obviously, you'd be foolish not to take full advantage of what Jefferson offers. But I also think, depending on coverage, and you talked about this, it was part of the talking point. Discretion is the better form of valor. So if it means throwing the ball 12 more times to tight ends, I don't think that should be a problem. I think the head coach should encourage that and have a talk with both of them. Because we know JJ can get frustrated if it's not going his way or he doesn't get the ball in his own way. But to me, the moral of the story is it never makes sense to force the ball to anybody, even one who allegedly, if it's 50-50 ball, I'm going to get it. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, my thoughts are a kudo sounds like something that you would get at a really fancy Japanese restaurant.
Well, that might be true. Yes.
Right? It's like an exotic fish that you just wouldn't find in Lake Minnetonka. And you're like, wow, I've never experienced a kudo before. Yes. This sounds amazing. And you put a little black caviar in there and you got yourself a meal.
A little beluga.
So I would say to what you described there that wasn't that the selling point to this offense about having T.J. Hawkinson back whenever we got him back, was having a 3-down running back in Aaron Jones, was that when you get in these situations where J.J. is going to be bracketed or doubled or they're just going to really be physical at the line of scrimmage, that you have other guys to throw to. And you're like, that's fine. You take away one weapon, guess what? We have 4 more. You take away 2 weapons, guess what? We still have 3 more. I thought the whole idea was to, just deal the ball all the way around to all your weapons, and eventually somebody's going to pop one, and then they're going to get frustrated as a defense, and then you could take advantage and then find JJ in some of those one-on-one situations. That just doesn't seem to be happening lately. And if it is, and I guess we are seeing it with the tight ends game, the football a lot more, it's just not amounting to maybe the big explosive plays that we're used to seeing. So I think philosophically, we need to maybe change our tone just a little bit and just be really okay with just dinking and dunking and working our way down the field. And we just can't turn the ball over in the red zone. That's the biggest thing.
And as you know, there's ebb and flow to all of this. It will count. It will come back. A lot of this has to do with, all right, that you can play that game that way. Guardsy mentioned it earlier. There's a little bit of a trap here where you say, okay, we're just going to be stubborn about giving you everything but JJ. And so we're just hoping sooner or later you'll get so frustrated you'll still try to force it in, right? And the chess match is we're not going to take the cheese. We'll as long as we win the game, we don't give a damn. And by the way, if you don't turn the ball over, you win that game easily, right? Even if you don't even score on all those drives, you're going to win the game pretty easily. And then guess what? The next team goes, well, we don't really want to play it quite like that because we don't want to give up that much underneath. So we're gonna cheat a little bit, and maybe it's 1.5 guys on JJ rather than 2. And then you go, okay, well now JJ's a little bit more open. So it always it evolves from game to game, right? And you're allowed to sort of respond to whatever that particular team is presenting you in terms of the defensive challenges.
Yeah, and sometimes, and we talk about this a lot when we're diagnosing and breaking down our opponent every week is we get caught in this trap of looking at a team like Jacksonville, and you're like, well, look at them on paper. Like they're, 31st in pass defense and not great against the run, but they're, they don't blitz that much. But it comes down to matchups, and it always has come down to matchups. And some teams, maybe we're just seeing two defenses back-to-back weeks where they just kind of match up what we don't do very well offensively, and that's right now with Sam Darnold is playing against the zone. He's just not seeing the full field and exactly where he needs to see some of these things. And he's got a little bit of tunnel vision, not just on targets, but he's got a little bit of tunnel vision on where these defenders are going to be. And I think that's the biggest problem is once he sees some of these zone concepts, it's not like it's new to him. He's just not anticipating maybe where that corner is going to float to. He's not anticipating where that nickel is maybe going to, slough off to and where he's going to drop back to. And so I think that's the biggest thing to work through. And then who knows? I haven't broken down the tape of Tennessee yet, but they've got a really good secondary. But how is it? Is it a zone type scheme? Is it a man type scheme? They're going to do what they do best. And if they're a man concept team, well, then that's going to play more into what we feel comfortable doing. But if they're a zone type of scheme, then we better find some answers, because what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, where we're just throwing the ball and it looks like he's just focusing on JJ, it's largely because there's so many tight windows because of all the zone coverage and all the underneath help. Yeah, and so you're asking for, even if you're pretty accurate, you're asking for, the margin for error is obviously reduced. Was it the first INT in the end zone, the one, I felt like Darnold had 18 seconds. And to me, that's one of those where you cannot throw a pick there, where you have literally all the time in the world. That's one where you either got to complete the pass or you got to spike. You got to, you just got to get rid of it. Whatever the case may be, that he on that one, he was not pressured at all. He had literally, I felt like, all day. Yeah, well, I think the first one was the tip ball. You're right. I'm sorry. Correct. It'd be the second one that I'm talking about. Yeah. Let's just kind of start. Let's even back up a little bit. There was another play, and now I don't remember if it was before or after that first interception. So let me just talk about the first interception. Okay. I'm usually erring on the side of the defender. I think that we over officiate and we over legislate a lot of defensive play. But to me, that defender was fouling Justin Jefferson when the ball was in the air. Mm-hmm. There was a great physical play at the line of scrimmage. He read it pretty good. He read it perfectly. But when the ball's in the air, you can't be grabbing the wide receiver. Right. And that's sort of how he gained the advantage on the leverage, was he grabbed him and held him when the ball's in the air, and then he stuck his left arm out, ball's in the air, and the linebacker comes down with it. There was another play where, it was not intercepted, but it goes back to the zone concept thing that I think Sam's having a hard time seeing. Is there was a play, it was an out-cutting route to T.J. Hawkinson. We called a 7 route, and he had time to throw the ball, and he just lofted it to where he wanted him to be versus where he thought the defender was going to be. And he needs to throw it sort of throwing TJ open. He throws it really right to the cornerback, and the cornerback should have made a play. That's right. And should have picked the ball off. You're right. We had another situation where over the middle, he was targeting Jordan Addison, and we had a too high safety look, and he just, floats the ball over the top, and that ball should have been picked off too. So again, it's some of these zone reads that he's just not feeling comfortable with. Now, to address the interception in the end zone, I hate to say it, guys, that was not an interception. And I know conceptually, I know what you're saying. Right. It should not have been thrown, and I don't know what he was thinking, kind of trying to fit that ball in there. But again, on replay, the ball clearly goes through his arms and hits the ground, and then they say that it was a clean catch. I just don't understand the ruling on that play. Let's get to another talking point. Guardsy calls this one Flonami Cashman. 2nd and 9 for the Jags from their own 48. 1:55 to go in the first half. Pistol formation. Jones facing a blitz by Cashman, and is sacked back at the 37-yard line. Blake Cashman, with his second sack this season, playing in his 50th game, backs up the Jaguars 8 yards. Mac Jones, 8 of 11, 73 yards, a rushing touchdown. Goes back to pass on first down. He's sacked! Mac Jones, they sack
Mack back by the 20. Ivan Pace Jr., the one to get him. Loss of 8, third sack this season for Ivan Pace Jr. The Vikings have sacked Mac Jones 2 times, and he goes out of the shotgun 1st and 10 from his own 30. Tank Bigsby by his side. Here's Van Ginkel. Down goes Mac Jones. Andrew Van Ginkel with his 6th sack this season.
There's a reason why I went and got him. He's been having a great year, and getting back to IP and Blake and those safeties in the front felt really good to have that group back together. Give a lot of credit to him for working his way back to it.
Okay, so it wasn't just about Cashman; it's the combo platter. But the Vikings do get him back. So what specifically gets reinstituted to this defense? What does he exactly specifically represent? And what did you see of the defense more generally?
You see a more efficient defense when just pre-snap stuff. It just, having Ivan Pace out there for all 3 downs just doesn't fit his game. For him to be the green dot, it's great that he can mentally handle the workload. But when he's got to be out there all 3 downs, especially in passing downs, that's just not his forte. He's a downhill A-B gap player, and he's phenomenal at doing it. He's a great blitzer. But him going backwards is not the best thing. Cashman can do it all, and he's proven that he can do it all. He can blitz, he can cover, he understands the run game, and that also keeps Van Ginkel down on line of scrimmage. We saw time and time again where it was Van Ginkel lined up as like kind of a middle linebacker, off the ball in the box, and we're like, what are we doing here? We're having to experiment with all different lineups and people in different positions. We kind of got back to the fundamentals and back to the basics of what makes our defense great. And, who knew? We didn't really know what we had in Cashman until he was out of the lineup, and you see the shuffling of the deck, and you're like, wow, I don't know if I like this card that we're dealt here. So let's get him back in the lineup, and let's just get back to what we know this defense to be. And that's kind of what happened. And granted, I want to make sure that we keep a clean perspective. I mean, it was Mac Jones that we're facing, and it was an offensive line that was down an offensive lineman as well, playing backup, and they have not been good even with their starters. So, take it with a little bit of grain of salt.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the same question I probably asked you last week. How much of it is the defense sort of, redefining what it does well? How much of it was really miserable quarterback play? I mean, is it more of one than the other, or different weeks? What do you think?
Well, I think in this case, because we do so much rotational stuff with our safeties and our linebackers and, post snap, that I think the scheme is just what threw off Mac Jones. And, he wasn't able to get a clean read, and which then allowed our rush to sort of get there and be disruptive. So I do think it was a lot to our defense, but it really helps when you've got a quarterback out there, facing this defense for the first time. And it's, extremely hard to replicate this in practice. And I know that he got all the practice reps because they knew that Lawrence, with his shoulder injury, probably wasn't going to play. He was getting evaluated the whole week, having look at him. So it's just a really hard defense to replicate in practice. And, Mac Jones is not getting the looks that he needs, especially in full speed. And so, yeah, philosophically, I think we definitely took it to him, but our guys won some one-on-one battles as well.
Could we have, to go back to the offense, could we have run even more than we did? I know Jones went out for a while, but, we ran effectively. Jacksonville had been dreadful stopping the run. Was that the way out of the box? Were we still throwing too much, or what do you think?
Well, it's, they're more behind the stats too. I mean, they were 10th in the league when it comes to yards per rush defensively. So, they were actually on a per play basis, okay, actually stopping the run pretty good. It's just that 31st ranked pass defense, people just decided to throw the ball all over them. So, no, I think that if we look back at this game and let's say you take away 2 of those interceptions, let's just give them an attaboy on that Justin Jefferson slant where he was physical at the line of scrimmage and they get that one. But, those other 2 that happened in the red zone and those are touchdowns, we're talking about a fully complete, balanced offense. That's exactly the way that we want to draw it up. We took time off the clock. We wore them down. I mean, you'd have checked every box. it just looks different because we didn't get those touchdowns. We didn't get those scores.
Did you get back in time to watch any of the Lions Houston Texans game?
I did sit down and watch some of that, yes.
Okay, so how do we... I fell asleep. I woke up late, and all I'm reading about or hearing about is 5 interceptions by the Lions, and it doesn't matter. They still win. So how did they do it? How did the Lions survive not 3 interceptions, but 5 interceptions to win on the road?
Well, it looked like their offense sort of relied more on their running backs, both running and catching. And I think when you have 2 dynamic guys like that, it's really hard to stop. And the defense actually got some stops. I'm not sure, I wasn't watching so closely to see if the Texans sort of changed their philosophy out of halftime and, see what was working. But, it's not like the Texans really offensively were doing a ton.
No,
they
that's
were just
true.
getting
They haven't all season,
a lot of
really.
opportunities on defense. So it just seemed like the Lions responded out of halftime. They were trying to be more efficient with the football and offense, and it worked. They just relied on some big plays by their running backs, and then their defense kind of just was doing what it was doing the whole game.
Hop Splash player of the game, what do we got?
So my Sierra Nevada Hop Splash player of the game, I'm surprised, not surprised, based on what this award stands for, but we heard a whole bunch of defensive players get, some love already on the call. Jonathan Grenard, he's been the player before, but, the things that I saw him do in the run game, he just does not get enough national credit for his overall game. He smashes the run. I mean, multiple weekends in a row where I've seen they try to kick him out with a pulling guard or maybe a swap action by a tight end, and they want to kick him out, and he just hammers those guys. I mean, he hammered Quentin Nelson last week, 2 games ago, who Quentin Nelson they talk about, maybe one of the best guards in the league in the way that he punishes people, and he punished him and put him back in the hole. He just continues to do that sort of play. I saw it again this last game against Jacksonville, and I just think that, he doesn't get enough credit for his physicality in the run game, and so that's the award for this week.
Yeah, it's hard, and I mean, just in general, like you said, that acquisition, obviously not as big a name as Daniil, but he's given them pretty much everything you could have hoped for and more, don't you think? The whole season, really.
Oh yeah, I think he's more athletic than Daniil.
Mm-hmm.
Daniil was really, really good at stopping the run. I mean, he was better at stopping the run early in his career than he was rushing the passer, and now he's kind of got more of a complete game. But what Grenard can do from a bend standpoint off the edge and a twitchiness is just, to me, is better than Daniil, and that's saying a lot because I think a lot of Daniil.
We haven't talked about the kicker, our new kicker, who obviously did the job. I mean, I think the last one slipped right in that right inside that right upright, but it was on the right side of it, which is the most important part of that. I guess in a game like this, I shouldn't, make short work of that. I mean, that if you're giving up the ball as often as the Vikings were, unable to complete drives, no matter what the distance is, you got to have somebody who's going to make them. And we didn't know, right? I mean, this guy's never kicked at the National Football League level. That could have been another Hop Splash Player of the Year, certainly finalist, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. Parker Romo did an amazing job. I was talking to, my good buddy Heath Farwell, who a lot of people know that he's the special teams coordinator down with Jacksonville. And we were talking before the game, and we were actually just talking about just the way that the stadium sort of swirls around with the wind. And he's like, he sort of laughed and chuckled. He's like, oh yeah, you see those flags, the American flag up there? He's like, don't even pay attention to those because they're going to blow one way, but then the top of the goalposts, they're going to go the other way. And it felt very much like Lambeau does, where it swirls inside that stadium. And so it was breezy in there. And, so Parker Romo had to deal with that aspect of it. And I think the biggest aspect is we make a lot of it, and maybe it's too much. The snapper, the holder, and the kicker, that 3-person battery, we talk about having to be like in lockstep. Like they practice thousands of snaps throughout the off season and during the season. And like every little thing has to be just perfect and meticulous. And you get Jake McQuaid out there, who's also new to the team. And so now all of a sudden, 2 of the 3 guys are brand new to this team this week that don't have those 1,000 reps. That was huge for those guys to come in there, very, poised and not feeling the pressure and nonchalant, and just go out there like, hey, got a job to do. I'm just going to snap the ball, And Parker Rome was like, my one job is to kick the ball. And they did that, and they were perfect. And so it was nice to see those guys come out and go 4 for 4. And basically, they really won the game for us.
So, I don't know if you saw the video that got some viral attention. I think it was, the Niners had a bunch of missed kicks. And there's a shot. Who was it? I can't remember which.
It was Debo.
Yeah, it was Debo. And he's got his hand on the throat. I think it was the long snapper, if I'm not mistaken. So, which pretty grim looking video, quite frankly. Now, afterwards, they all said, yeah, I got a little carried away, and we figured it all out. But on any team that you ever played on at any level, was the vitriol ever that poisonous between, let's say, the defense or offense and special, somebody on the special teams, the kicker or the long snapper? Is there any sort of history you can recall in your career where it was that tense?
The only time I can say, it certainly never happened with Minnesota. We had a great group of guys, and never happened in Minnesota. It actually happened in Nate Kading's rookie year in San Diego.
Okay.
And, the stud Iowa kicker. And he comes in, and we're in a playoff game, and, he misses a kick that would have won the game in the playoffs.
Ooh.
And it's one of those things where you feel for him because he's a rookie. But I remember guys sort of mumbling and muttering in the locker room, like, you got one bleeping job, man. Like, we're out here, literally, bleeding for this team and trying to win this game. And you're over there just like hanging out, and you've got one job to get mentally prepared, and you missed the kick. And it wasn't even all that far. I think it was like maybe 42 yards or something like that.
Man.
Kind of a chip shot, I guess. And really nothing was the same since,
Interesting.
Unfortunately, I think he just kind of lost some confidence. He missed some other kicks, and, a super, super talented player that just did not have a long life in the NFL. And I really think it kind of like started at that moment where I think he felt the team a little bit sort of like get down on him.
Well, it's interesting you say it because I on the one hand, it's hard not to feel bad for the kicker because he's well aware he's only got the one job, and there can't be a worse feeling than I'm letting everybody else down. On the other hand, I guess I could see if you're, like you said, you're bleeding, you're hyperventilating, you're doing all the things, you're utterly committed, and this guy can't just make whatever you say it was, 41, 42-yard kick, that human nature being what it is, like, the bleep, man. I know you feel bad, but what are you doing? How is this possible?
Yeah, and it's just the magnitude of whatever situation that happens in. If it happens in game number 2 of his rookie year, and you drop a game, you're like, all right, no big deal.
Right.
Learning moment for the rookie kicker, and like, yeah, we would have loved to win that game, but you kind of move on. But when there's a finality to the end of the season, that one's tough.
Yeah, I could see where it might possibly be. Great stuff as always, sir. Thanks for the time. We will chat next week. Thank you, Nacho.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Thanks,
That's Ben Leber, Nacho Leber, who joins us weekly. We still have some more Vikings talking points to get to, a couple of other subjects to explore. We're going the distance until 6:30.
Fan and 2 men in the junk truck want to give you a shot to put a grand in your hand with our national cash contest. Final keyword of the evening is win. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword win.
I wonder if we have, once upon a time, I think too often maligned Vikings head coach Mike Tice came up with the Randy ratio, remember? And he just got destroyed for what I thought was kind of stating the obvious, that, if you've got a weapon that good, you have to find a way to get him the ball. Other people were offended, like, well, why would you go public with that? It makes it so obvious, blah, blah, blah. I look back on that, I think probably too much was made of it.
Simpler times.
But do you think, in effect, even though we're not declaring it, it is a problem here that we got a JJ ratio. It's not as alliterative, but I do worry about it. We talked about it early in the show. Leber, I think, has some concerns with it as well. And I do hope that even if they don't want to publicly talk about that they're having those frank, honest conversations privately. When I say they, I mean the head coach, probably the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach, and not just Sam Darnold, but also JJ. I think he's got to be in on it because JJ gets that very tight look on his face.
Yeah.
He really does.
Yep.
He's not as vocal as Moss could be or Carter could be, but, and again, I get it. He wants the ball. He's really good, blah, blah, blah. But I hate to think that's going to be part of what brings this thing down or makes it more likely that we're talking about more and more interceptions. Now, again, some of this is Darnold's accuracy. Some of this is on his decision-making. But I do think the one danger you have with a player who's that good at the position is that we got to get him the ball, man. We got to get him the ball. That sounds good, but it's fool's gold. And I absolutely believe that that's something they have to confront. And a lot of this is, I think, Jefferson saying, I'm cool.
Right.
I'm not going to lose my mind over this because in the end we are trying to win. And that at some point he says, because the message that he has allegedly conveyed in the past to the head coach and to the QB is, throw me the ball. I'll get it. You know, it's almost like the last, late in the movie Hoosiers. I'll make it.
Jimmy Chitwood.
Right? On the last shot. And you want that in your best player, right? I mean, you clearly do. But football is a game where you can't just cater to that. You can't be trapped by it. And I think we're seeing full evidence of it. So I honestly think going forward, no matter who you're playing, the rest of this season, that has to be the number one hurdle that's cleared. And I also think that eventually it'll take care of itself. There will be games this year where he's going to get the ball 12 times.
There already have been.
And there have been, yeah. And so, but you can't worry about within any given game that, well, I thought Jefferson's our best player. Why aren't we getting him the ball? It doesn't always work that way, even with your best player, depending on, it's all supposed to be about, well, if they're going to bracket him that much, there's got to be stuff everywhere, other parts of the field, right? There's got to be a number of other opportunities because there's only 11 on defense. Right? So if 2 and 2.5 are devoted to that one guy, if you have time, and by the way, he had plenty of time yesterday, Darnold did, then there should be other opportunities.
Yeah, I think the frustration I sensed from JJ yesterday was there were a couple of times, the picks, I feel like he was open, certainly on the last one to the right.
Yeah.
Where Sanchez even talked about he's got to throw that ball to the pylon. Right. He can't throw it anywhere near it. So, nope. It was almost like the times where he wasn't necessarily bracketed or really being physicaled like he was on that first one. The throws were just so bad. Where Darnold has to be careful, I do think, is obviously in the red zone where if you watch it, he does have other places to go, including to Aaron Jones on a check down right away. And that's what we started to see from Darnold a couple of times. He's forced it into places when there were other options available. And I wonder if that has to do with they're locking in too much on, hey, this is where this is supposed to go, but this option might be there too. Like he's not getting to the second or third progressions as quickly as he should. Because I think on one of them, the one that shouldn't have been an interception, as Leber brought up, Jonesy's wide open at the 5.
Yeah,
now, I don't know if he's going to score. Right. There's a guy coming up, but at least it extends it a little bit. They may have been able to get a first down. What's killing them, the other thing too, though, is you can't, and Darnold alluded to this after the game, when it's first or second down and you're at the 22-yard line, don't force anything anywhere to any player, whatever you think is open.
Especially when you have 9 seconds.
Sure. And you have multiple opportunities to get back at it and try it again. You should
throw it out of the end zone.
Yes. Or take the easy one.
Right.
Don't just say, I got Addison over here, or there's TJ. Can I fit this ball in? On first or second down, when it's a close game or you're up or you're just trying to extend the lead, don't force anything. And that's what I think he's done he's gotten almost greedy because there was times earlier in the season it looked really easy. Their red zone efficiency was off the charts, wasn't it? They were scoring touchdowns almost every time they got down there, and everything was working.
Yes.
Everybody was grittying. Yep. Jonesy was catching balls out of the backfield. So I think Darnold almost got comfortable down there, like whatever we call is going to work. Even last week, the one touchdown was a great, when everybody thought they were going to run it, and they do a little play-action pass, and he just pitched it over. Like, there have been so many wide-open, easy plays in the red zone through the first 9 games. It's almost like Darnold expected that to continue, and their teams are tightening it up down there, especially around JJ, because obviously he's going to be option one.
This might be worthy of more extensive discussion tomorrow, maybe even with Kevin Seifert. Did you see these Nuggets? Now, we're how many weeks into the season now? What's our record? We're 7-2. So we're 9 games in. So far, 2024 National Football League season. Fewest yards per catch, this is across the league. Fewest yards per catch ever. Highest quarterback completion percentage ever. Most yards per rush ever. Fewest fumbles ever. Lowest turnover percentage ever. Most 50-plus yard field goals made per game ever. Low risk, low reward offense still eating the game. That's a guy named Derek Thompson, who's actually not a sports guy. He's an Atlantic guy who we quote from time to time.
Revenge of the check down and revenge of the running back.
But it's those are fascinating numbers, are they not?
Conservative. PJ Fleck likes those numbers.
He probably would love to coach in the National Football League with those sorts of parameters, right? So I don't know where it's headed. I'll ask Seifert about that tomorrow. If it's like, is this sort of a mirage, kind of a one
winning
season
football,
deal?
complimentary football.
It's it is fascinating to see. So because some of these, we look at some of these percentages of the quarterback and go, 62% is nothing anymore. You got to better get to 70. But part of that is, well, maybe they're lower percentage, and we're not seeing, and we are seeing Mark Craig. I meant to get to it Sunday, and I didn't. Had a really good piece heading into the weekend from the Star Tribune, basically the revenge of the running back. And some of those numbers dovetail nicely with the ones we just quoted, where there is value. And what's weird now is, like, you think of, like, close to, like, 4.7, 4.8 yards per rush. Once upon a time would have been great. Now it's, like, average.
Yeah.
And so the running game, and a lot of the belief is more and more teams, because it's become a passing league, are playing safeties deep. And finally, teams are no longer being as stubborn. Well, we're still going to throw, because that's what we are. We throw. More teams are taking advantage of it over the ground. So might be fodder. Yeah.
I mean, that 100% with Jonesy and Cam Akers, I thought had another good day yesterday. Yeah, decent. He obviously got some pretty good run. Akers has cracked off a couple of runs.
Yes.
Even my guy Chandler had an 8-yard run or something late in the game.
Correct.
Like, they're finding value in it for sure.
Let's get an early pause in. We got Jonny Athletic coming up. We'll get his reaction to Vikings. We'll also talk to him about the Wolves dysfunction down the stretch that has many Wolves fans very unhappy after the loss to the to Heat culture without, again, Jimmy Butler, who allegedly, even Johnny said,
he was ready.
Really was going to play this one, and then was sidelined with an ankle injury.
He's out the next game, too.
Significant injury involving the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Chet
Local
Holmgren.
angle, which is just awful story. Absolutely awful story. So we'll cover the waterfront as we do with Jonny Athletic. That's next.
Time now for the Vikings Report on The Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite.
It's time for Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barrero right now.
It is that time again. Jonny Athletic joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I introduced early in the program this question, similar to what Johnny mentioned via Twitter in preparation for our visit. I sort of broadened it out, which is dangerous because I'm including hockey in the discussion, and that might be a mistake with Jonny Athletic. But what bothered I asked the fans, what bothered them the most? Was it the Wild loss? Was it the Wolves loss? Was it the Gophers loss? Or was it the Minnesota Vikings victory? If you are ranking those four, give me your order.
I would say number 4 would probably be the Wild loss. Not because of hockey or anything like that, but one of regular season, a lot of games, that's going to happen. Number 3, Gophers lost because, frankly, I'm sorry, but I just expect them to lose games like that.
That's chill.
And that happens. That just happens around here. Number 2, I'll give the Vikings win because they did win. It was terrible. It was a terrible performance by Sam Darnold, but they squeaked it out and got lucky. And I think the one that bothered me the most, probably because I'm the closest to it, but there's no way on earth the Wolves should have lost that game last night against Miami. Miami didn't play that well. There are times in the season where you face an undermanned opponent, they come out and they just hit a bunch of shots and they're playing really motivated. They're playing smart basketball and they just beat you. That happens. And sometimes it stinks, but you're okay with it. But this one was Miami didn't play well. They turned the ball over 23 times. They made so many mistakes, but the Wolves just made more boneheaded decisions from the players and the coaches in the last 5 minutes of that game to just give that one away on your home floor. I think that's the most maddening of all four outcomes.
All right, who are we, if we reduce it then, isolate the Wolves game, who are we madder at? The coaches or the players?
I mean, I think ultimately the players, you're more mad at them because, they didn't make shots. And then in those last few minutes, the decision-making from Ant, the decision-making from even Mike Conley, the turnovers, the missed assignments, the confusion, like all of that, ultimately they have to wear that. Like there was too many of them making individually poor decisions or bad plays, that I give, if you're kind of parsing it out, you give the players a little bit more of the blame because they didn't execute. That said, Chris Finch, who has been terrific since he's been here, and is a huge reason that the Wolves are where they are right now as a team that is relevant in the Western Conference. He's a great coach, but he had a bad night. I just don't understand why you pull Nickeil Alexander-Walker for Mike Conley in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. I don't see any scenario where you pull Rudy Gobert off the floor when you're only up 2 in a defensive situation like that and put Mike Conley on the floor. Like there were real mistakes that he made that certainly contributed to it as well. Everyone has to wear that loss for sure.
Well, did Miami make a late sub that had something to do with, at least in theory, why then Finchie went the direction he did?
Yeah, he did say, and I asked him after the game why you take Rudy off the floor there, and he did say that Miami brought Kevin Love out there, and so he was thinking he wanted to prevent the threes.
Right.
That was the most important thing. You lose the game on a 3-point basket. He certainly wasn't accounting for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who had been a really good player all game long, making a silly foul on Jovic. So it wasn't just a layup. It was actually a 3-point play to lose it. So I understand that part of it of wanting to be more mobile on the perimeter, but then why is it Conley and not DiVincenzo? And why is Conley guarding the inbound? What does that do for you? And just to have no rim protection at all there. And you saw it. You saw the play. They scored in 1 second. That's how easy it was for Miami to do it. And I just think that in that spot, I have a real hard time pulling the guy off the floor that is one of the best rim protectors to ever play the game, when you can stop a 2-point basket from being made, and it was just way, way too easy for Miami in that.
All right.
situation.
Review then what happened after that. Our difficulty and confusion, it appears, getting the ball in or even running anything. So what happened there?
Yeah. So, there were 2 plays. They had 2 cracks at it essentially right after it. And the first one, you look at it and Anthony Edwards is inbounding the ball and you think that's kind of weird. Why don't you put the ball in his hands and let him create, even though he had played a horrible game to that point. But Finch did say that he wanted a flare screen for Ant coming off of the inbound.
Right.
And getting a look that way. It did not work. And then if you remember, so Conley gets it and he gets fouled as just before he's shooting. And I think there was some confusion among the players as to why Conley was not shooting free throws and them calling the foul on the floor. And while they were looking for clarification from the officials just kind of moved on with their lives and wanted to get the play back in, get the ball back to Wolves to inbound. Anthony Edwards wasn't even supposed to inbound the ball in that second situation, but he was just kind of in the area, and the ref said, "Here, let's go." And so he grabbed the ball and inbounded it. And so there was just a ton of confusion in that moment that Finch said that he needed to do a better job of being real clear with what he wanted and what they were supposed to do in that instance. And so that was another area where he fell short. That said, Dan, Ant inbounds the ball to Mike Conley in the corner, and he gets a beautiful, clean look at a corner shot that he's made a million times in his life, and he's struggled so badly to start the season, and he just missed it, and it wasn't even close. And they just seem to have lost all composure in that moment. Everyone was confused. Nobody knew what was going on. It was just a whole mess. Did
they have another timeout?
They did not.
So there wasn't any chance of recalibrating it that way either.
No.
Okay.
It was they had made a challenge earlier in the quarter that was actually, again, not a wise decision to challenge the play that they did. It was real obvious that Jaden McDaniels was in the landing space of the shooter, and that call was not going to get overturned. They challenged it anyway. They lose a timeout. Then at the end, when you really need one, you're out of them.
Are we at a point where we're starting to get worried about our guy, Mike Conley?
I mean, a little bit, Dan. We've talked to him about this a lot. You know, he had the wrist thing. We've discussed that, but I do think that of all of the players who are adjusting to this new identity that the Timberwolves have with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo versus with Karl Anthony Towns, Mike Conley has had as much difficulty as anyone, which is a surprise. He's so smart. You think that he would just figure out a way to kind of get settled in here, but he is shooting terribly right now. I think it's 32% from the field, 30% from three. He is, or it might be reversed, but either way, it's just terrible. He does not look like he has any kind of control of his role on the floor. And when you think about Mike Conley, all you think about is control. You think about floor general. You think about making great decisions. You think about all of these things. And so now we are seeing him make turnovers that he never makes. You're just seeing him force shots that he never would do before. And he looks completely out of character. And I think he's flabbergasted a little bit. I think one of the things Chris Finch is trying to limit his minutes, and having him as a starter makes those shifts that he has to stay around 22 minutes a game a lot shorter, which makes it harder for him to get a rhythm. You have DiVincenzo, you have Ant, you have Julius Randle as kind of guys who initiate the offense. And so he's kind of more of a spot-up shooter as well versus a quarterback of the offense. And it hasn't looked good. I think that he will pull out of it. He will figure things out and play much, much better. And I understand why Finch went back to him in that moment last night as kind of a show of faith for all of the good things that he has done here. That, hey, man, I'm sticking by you. Go out there and bring it home for us. But he's just not delivering right now. And there are other guys that are playing better than he is. And so I think Finch will give it more time, but there's going to be, if it drags on too much longer, the questions are going to get more difficult.
Yeah, including starting lineup questions, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, Conley, even though you do have DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker as options off the bench, who, especially Nikhil, has played really well, they still are not prototypical point guard.
Right.
And so if you were, let's say you put DiVincenzo in the starting lineup over Conley, he is a good initiator. He can do things for you, and he knocks down shots and plays good defense and all of those things. But it's not the real quintessential point guard there that you might want with Ant, with Edwards, with Rudy, and trying to get everything moving.
Integrated, right?
But yeah, you can see a scenario where you say, hey, look, Mike, maybe it's easier to manage your minutes and give you a few longer stretches on the court if you come in with that second unit and go that way. That is something that may eventually have to be explored. I don't think Chris Finch is anywhere close to that right now, but that is certainly a scenario that you think about, because the starting five right now just has not been good enough. And And you got to find ways to figure that out and streamline that and get it playing a lot better.
Jonny Athletic joining us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline on this Monday evening here on The Fan. You mentioned the Vikings earlier. I do want to get back to that, too. So as you evaluate where we are with Darnold, clearly the team, there's nothing to talk about. There's nowhere else to go. You have to double and triple down with him, no matter, even internally what they are honestly thinking, because there is no other option, I don't believe, that you can consider. But have you seen now enough from him the last few weeks to say, yeah, cute club, they've set themselves up that where they're probably going to make the playoffs, but I can't in good conscience say right now that this is a team that's got a chance to be really dangerous when we get to January on the basis of the degree to which Darnold is giving up the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I'm at right now, Dan, is like, given the regression that we have seen in recent weeks, given the amount of turnovers that he is committing, and especially the turnovers like yesterday, Dan, where it wasn't like he was under a bunch of duress. There were a couple of the throws he had plenty of time to make a good decision and either throw the ball away or go a different direction, and he just hasn't been. And so it does temper my optimism about what this team can do this year. I do think that it's still possible for them to get to the playoffs, for them to have a good season, which is greater than what I expected going into the year. So I give Darnold that. He has been better than I expected in many ways, but he still has this element of danger to his game that is going to end up costing this team in a major, major way, in a big spot. It's hard not to think that now, just given the way that we have seen him play the last few weeks, especially.
I don't see how we get around it. And one of the recurring themes of today's show has been that I think part of the communication that needs to go on with the head coach, look, he's done the bully pulpit thing, which he has to do. This is my guy. It doesn't mean a lot to me, but it's probably the right play publicly, and that is, hey, we know, everybody knows in this locker room, Sam Darnold's the guy who's going to lead us where we're going to go. But it's stating to a certain extent the obvious, that because there is no other place to go, right? I mean, you can't make a trade at this point. JJ's not available at this point. You're not turning the team over to your backup, especially when this backup is even more likely to throw interceptions. So that's all fine. I don't think it means that much, but it's fine. To me, the larger discussion has to be flat out, stop being obsessed with Justin Jefferson. Stop. I don't want you to do that anymore. I don't care what kind of look is on JJ's face. I'll deal with the looks on his face. This to me is what the head coach has to say to the quarterback, and I think there's some of that seeping in right now.
I think you're totally right, Dan. And I'll admit I'm sometimes guilty of this myself in watching them run the offense in periods of time where Jefferson isn't as involved. I'm just like, why don't you throw to the best player in the NFL right now? Like, what is going on here? But I think there is certainly a difference between forcing it that way, like we saw him do against Jacksonville, and doing it in a way that is both responsible and has a higher degree of success rate than what he did yesterday. And I think especially, Dan, now that you do have TJ Hawkinson back, and you did see some glimmers of the old Jordan Addison last week, it's not a situation where you feel like Justin Jefferson should be your only option. You have these other tools around you. Use them until it gets the defense leaning just a little bit away from JJ, and that's when you strike and go for it. And so, I do think that there has to be some sort of conversation between the head coach and the quarterback about what are the expectations for getting Justin involved, because you absolutely do not want to have a $200 million decoy over there. That is not going to be a recipe for offensive success for this team. But you have to find a way to use him and all of the attention that he demands from a defense to your advantage in other ways. getting it to Hawkinson, throw it out to Aaron Jones and let him go. Look for Jordan Addison over the middle, things like that will help this offense and make things easier on the quarterback itself, because it was too much against the Jags, and it reeked of desperation, and they got burned for it.
Yeah, and the only reason they didn't get burned for it in a loss is your defense continues to take the ball away at a rate that is now number one in the league. But how realistic is that, moving forward too? Hawkinson gets added, use him, right? And we saw it. In fact, on one drive, they had a series of third down conversions because they went to him. And I think the other thing, and I'm not saying JJ makes a big deal of this, but I think we all get hung up in these, every time Jefferson reaches another threshold, well, no receiver's ever done this over this amount of time. They got to get past that. At some point, it's got to be, you've established you're in rarefied air already, but the idea that you might not get the next threshold, we can't worry about, right? Because if we had a better quarterback, maybe we could, but he's not a bad quarterback, but he's still not a great quarterback. So given the limitations that have been seen throughout his career and that it now is being revealed again, I think we got to make whatever play can keep the chains moving, and everybody will be happy. And eventually there'll be another game where Jefferson gets the ball, 14 times for 186 yards.
Yeah, and one thing that demands, Dan, is patience. And it can be difficult for a quarterback, for a receiver, for anyone to have patience to just go down the field 10, 12, 14 yards at a time and get down there and just take the easy thing the whole way. I do think that Sam Darnold has part of his DNA as a quarterback that, hey, sometimes has been thrilling because we've seen him make some unbelievable throws and really go after it and go down the field. That's really cool that he's willing to cut loose and take those chances. But one of the reasons that he is where he is right now at this point in his career, with only a 1-year deal for $10 million and trying to prove that he is still a viable option for a starting quarterback in this league, is that he, I think, has a shorter attention span in that way. And he wants so badly to go down the field. He wants to cut it loose. He wants to really come up with the big play. And time again, both in college, in Carolina, with the New York Jets, and now with the Vikings, he's averaging more than an interception a game in his life. And that's just, with the way quarterbacking is done now, that's not good enough. And so defenses are banking on him getting impatient and getting, kind of thirsty for the big play. And that's when they are capitalizing on it. And Darnold has to recognize that.
1 minute left. Give me the update on whether it really was true that Jimmy Butler did intend to play last night for the first time in like 3 years in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And secondly, the horrific injury involving our guy from Oklahoma City.
Yeah, so Jimmy, I was told before the season started that Jimmy was going to play at Target Center, that this was the first time in forever. We all know that he has not played here, that he's ducked the smoke a little bit and all that, but I think that was fully on his radar to play. And I understand Timberwolves fans being skeptical of that and wanting to have their fun with that. Go for it.
Right.
You deserve it. Jimmy deserves that. General soreness memes. Absolutely. But then he did have the sprained ankle, so he did not play. He has missed 6 out of the 11 games against the Timberwolves since he joined Miami, Dan, which is like, it's crazy. And not all of them have been just solely for injury. So I understand the impatience there and the skepticism from Wolves fans and having fun at his expense. But he was not in the lineup last night. With Chet Holmgren, really unfortunate, fractured hip. He fell really hard on that thing, and he's going to be out at least 8 to 10 weeks. I think they were saying, Oklahoma City said that actually they're only going to issue some sort of update in 8 to 10 weeks, which means he'd probably be several more weeks after that in terms of ramping up. So it looks like he's going to be out for quite a while. And now Oklahoma City has their top 3. All 3 of their big men are out. And so they're going to have to go super, super small and and get creative. And that's a really, really good team that's now kind of up against it in the size department right now.
Thank you, Johnny. We'll chat next week.
All right, Dan. See ya.
John Krasinski, Jonny Athletic is what we call him these days, writes for The Athletic. We have a full half hour yet to go, and we're going to go right back to the beginning of the show because I'm told Guardsy mentioned something about a tough day or there was something he was going to reveal later, according to a couple texters. Does this sound familiar to you?
No.
Oh, well, I don't know what they
think
heard.
I just said Dan's on his way in.
Oh.
More on that later or something.
Oh, I see. Okay, they made it sound like more that you had something that you were aggravated by, maybe personally, not related to me, but that there was something else.
Just the Timberwolves game last night.
That's it.
That's
a
what
lot
I was
of it.
aggravated by.
We'll get to that, and we'll get to a couple of texts that have come in from folks who want to criticize us for being way, way too negative about a team that, if you check the standings and you don't look at them upside down, are sitting at 7-2. After 9 games.
I know this is true. You can join the Power Trip Morning Show live on Black Friday from 7 to 9 at the Huntington Bank Rotunda at Mall of America.
Wow.
Of course, they're going to be playing the Initials game live for multiple grand prizes, including a trip and ticket bundle.
That sounds
to see
like
your
a
favorite
fun
teams on the road, plus
morning.
the ultimate Minnesota Sports Day on Black Friday. Get full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
That's even better. I actually now I'm getting some text saying, no, what you had said was Dan was going to explain his bad day. I did not have a bad day necessarily.
I didn't say bad day.
Well, you know how it is. People, they read what they read what they want to believe or remember what they want to believe. I did end up at the Mall of America. I had 2 doctor's appointments today, the second one of which it was basically, this is the time or you're never going to get in. And unfortunately, that was at 2:00. So the choice today, maybe the easy thing, I guess, would have been just to take the damn day off. I mean, I do have still some vacation days coming, but I have too much respect for the audience. So I said, okay, my choices are show up a few minutes late on the basis of the appointment time made it impossible to get back here in perfect timing because it was in Eagan, actually. Take the whole thing off. And I said, no, it's a Monday after a Vikings game. So that was it. There's really anything particularly controversial or unusual. Maybe the moral of the story is I would have been better off just taking it off. Then people, you just took the day off. Right?
You could have just said load management.
No, if I say that, you know how that goes. Load management, then I really get ripped. So there's really nothing. In other words, everybody knew today it was an excused absence, if you want to call it an absence. I think I walked in was by 3:15,
like 3:09.
I mean earlier, yeah, because I did get in on the interview with Cam Bynum. So I
was going to let Max lead that too. By the way, said if you didn't get in on time, Max was sitting in your chair. So I felt like that was easiest to just switch you out, switch Max out. Max was ready to go deep on the breakdancing celebration. And so I thought that'd be great. Just let those two kick it around for 7 or 8 minutes.
Mark from Fargo he's not letting you off the hook. Justin absolutely mentioned you had a rough day. Then you show up and just start waxing poetically about sports. I think you might want to find out what Justin's secret agenda
No,
is.
I remember what I said was Dan's had a day, which means...
right, yeah, okay.
I mean, I guess you could take it as a bad day.
Yeah, people probably thought that meant a bad day. It was actually all planned, and it wasn't perfect. I mean, that made it always difficult to... seriously, what I'm learning is... First of all, I appreciate the degree to which people care. I really do. And the degree to which they sort of want like some kind of a ruling on this. And all I can tell you is the bosses knew from the beginning for days that this was going to be the case. So the choices were, and maybe this is the lesson, just take the day off. And then you're off today.
I should have just let Max talk for 8 minutes. That's the lesson.
Maybe that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Or if barring that, still trying to be here for most of the time, except the fact that you're going to be a little bit late as I deal with I don't think a real major health issue, but some stuff that I'm trying to get rectified and taken care of, which I know will just
be careful. Now you just opened the whole thing. Yeah.
I know.
I didn't even say that.
Yeah.
You're right. Had a day.
Yeah, I just had a day. Well, I didn't think it was like illegal to say I had a doctor's appointment I had to make, but I guess for some people, well, where's that coming from? So I probably did open another door that will not be closed anytime soon. So you didn't have a bad day or a difficult day.
Not until the last 10 minutes or so. No, yeah, everything was pretty smooth.
Very much so. Difficult. All right, why don't we try to squeeze in... Do we go... What do we have left? We have Darnold Dilemma.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about that.
And we've got TJ Ratio, which we've talked about. Are either of those... Or do we play Romo? I mean, we've talked about all three of them. What do you think is the... in our remaining minutes, the one that might make the most sense?
Well, I would say, because the way I titled it to you was John David Booty.
Yes, right.
John Parker. Also Parker Romo.
His name's John Parker Romo. He wants to go by Parker Romo. First year from Virginia Tech. Long snapper Jake McQuaid, 14th year from Ohio State University. And this will be a 45-yard try. First National Football League kick for Parker Romo. Snap, spot, end over end kick is good. Parker Romo! Who knew? Parker Romo, 33-yard try, right hash. He's 1 of 1. His second field goal try in his NFL career is good. Parker Romo kicks it to a 7-6 Jacksonville lead. He's 2 of 2 on field goals. This is going to be a 34-yard try from between the hash marks. Jake McQuaid snaps. Ryan Wright holds. Parker Romo to give the Vikings the lead. Snap, spot, kick is up, and it is good! 4 for 4 in a victory. That puts you in conversation for NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Snap, spot. Parker Romo's kick splits the uprights, and the Vikings have taken a 12-7 lead. Parker Romo is 4 of 4 on field goals.
So there it is, a perfect day on a day where we all said, let's not have it come down to the field goal kicker. You know, don't do that. Put the boot on the throat early.
Darnold said no.
And Vikings did absolutely, offensively, did absolutely none of that. They moved the ball, but we all know what happened when they would get into the red zone, when Darnold would try to force some throws in or not throw particularly accurately. So I think it is fair to say that this will be registered for me as a defensive victory and a special teams victory, and that's legal. I mean, that's what good teams do. Doc in... Hold on a second. I got to get my cheaters. In Bovey? Where's Bovey?
I don't know. How do you spell that?
Is it Bovey or Bovey? B-O-V-E-Y. Is that Minnesota?
Let's find out.
You're the local.
Not that local.
Yeah. B-O-V-E-Y. Is that a real place?
It is. Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's up by Coleraine.
Oh, okay. I'm glad he's checking in.
Iron Range. I think we've talked to this guy before.
Maybe we have, because Doc's bitter. Wow. We're 7-2. Sam is in his first year here. Talk about Danny Downer. Never apologize after a greasy road win. Lay off the negativity sent with slam effect. I get it. I mean, that is the bottom line. Go back to the beginning of the season. We both, I certainly would have said, you need your head examined if you think they're going to be 7-2 after 9 games. And here they are, no matter how they got here. I'm trying to think of how you give yourself the best chance to feel viable now that you've raised the bar a bit in December and January, and dare I say it, February, although I'm not holding out much hope for that. And this, of course, isn't sustainable, especially in a game in which there were 3 interceptions thrown, could have been 5. 4 was called back on a penalty.
Yep.
There was at least one other that went right through somebody's hands.
Yes.
I mean, there should have been 5
the
picks
Addison one
in this game. It's like, no, that's like video football. You can't do that. You can't be taken seriously, no matter how many other throws you're making and how much we're behind you. That's not going to work at this level. So it's all right. You're playing Jacksonville this week. You're playing Tennessee next week. You were playing an old quarterback who looked every bit his age last week against the Colts. You're not going to be able to keep counting on that. We probably don't think.
By the way, for the record, the first 8 or 9 minutes, besides mischaracterizing your day to the audience, that was my main take, because I was just happy a team won yesterday, and I was happy they were 7-2 after the ugliness of the weekend. I loved it. I loved the game yesterday because it was so bad and so ugly, but they found a way to figure it out. Because thankfully, that's why one of them was, God bless the Jaguars. Because even in the final minute, when the Vikings still couldn't put them away, the Jaguars said, "We've had enough. We're going to get a personal foul penalty for no reason."
That's still the best.
For no reason. And I didn't know that. I knew the Vikings won.
Yeah.
But I said, wow, they're going to get the ball back. What happens here? And
which was insane in of itself.
Yeah.
But that it was not to be, because the doofus factor is undefeated in professional football.
It just cracked me up. I said, that's how the game finished. Yeah. I guess that's apropos.
And it was. You could say it was perfectly appropriate for the way this thing that played out. Let's make this one final pause. We'll remind you of a couple things you might have missed. We had 3 outstanding guests today. We'll give you highlights and prepare for tomorrow's program as well. I should be here on time for that one.
MMA fans, it's time. You can join Max Fuller Saturday for a UFC 309 watch party at the Ballpark Twin Cities in Blaine. Hanging out starting at 7 through the main card with tons of prizes, including a big screen TV up for grabs, great drinks, scratch-made food, batting cages all available. Go hang with Max. He's a vibe. He's fun. Full details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar. Show Wrap is brought to you by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washers since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper Show Wrap.
We had quite a program today. Cam Bynum joined us early. Leber in the about 4:45 or so, and then Jonny Athletic. So a lot of Vikings, some Timberwolves. There's been some Gopher conversation as well. Vikings Rewind is going to follow us tonight as per usual after a Vikings game. And then it's a pretty intriguing Monday Night Football matchup. The sort of resurgent, reborn Rams are hosting the Miami Dolphins. Tomorrow, Seifert will be in studio, and we'll also be joined by Tom Crean, former big-time college basketball coach, who we started having on occasionally during the Wolves postseason run. His relationship, of course, going back to college with Anthony Edwards, and just his basketball analysis, helping us through that playoff run. So we'll get caught up with him. I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about the big trade, how it changes how the Wolves go about their business, and the challenges for any coach putting the thing together, because it's very clear he's struggling with some aspects of it. And a big part of it is, what am I obligated to do with veteran players? Am I obligated to go back with them on the basis of their credibility and their equity? Or am I perhaps taking away my best chance to win that particular game? And am I trying to win the battle? Am I trying to win the war? All that stuff is complicated, and I think it's an open question at a number of places. My preference is, if they really meant what they said about it's a different year, everybody's ego's got to be checked, including guys who've been around, that it's literally a year where you go, it's going to depend on my feel that night with 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go. And I'm not always going to be right, but that's it. And that means on a given night, maybe Conley doesn't finish, which has already happened, I think, once or twice.
Yep. I was surprised it happened last night.
Maybe Rudy doesn't finish. Maybe Julius Randle doesn't finish. I think it should be open-ended this year more than any. We've got more depth, we've got more options, so we're going to damn well use them, and we're not going to worry about people's feelings being hurt. It's a combination of pretty much all of those things. With the Wolves arbitration hearings now over, a decision is looming. Who wins it, Dr. Dan? The hearings are over?
Johnny reported earlier today the hearings are over. I missed
that. I would have brought that up with him then.
But his tweet was it could still be a while.
Okay.
Like it's still expected to be a while.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't going to be like a day later you're going to get the ruling.
No.
Because if it's a complicated case, one would presume it's going to take more than a minute, unless it's a slam dunk. Sometimes with juries, that's what
we should do the show. Is when we get word. Like a lot of times you get word when you're covering a big trial, the verdict is in.
Right.
It'd be great if we could get the verdict was in and then go do the show from there. And then do a live post-game show. You wanted to do it from there during the hearing, which was closed.
Yeah.
We should do it after.
Not a bad idea.
And figure out, can we get
all the principals?
Can we get a live feed?
Well, the key is going to be, can you get both the winners and losers to come to the microphone? My guess is no. What do you think? The winners, yes.
Yeah, winners for sure.
I don't know if you get the loser.
And then Leber and I could be the sideline reporters. We could flip a coin for who gets winner and who gets loser.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
So we could do, Mark, A-Rod, obviously.
That would be
not what we wanted today, or Glenn, not the decision we were hoping for.
Yeah.
I could do the hush-toned losers.
You are correct.
Or I could do the how does it feel to have the team? I could do either way. I've had to do them both.
You've got experience in that area.
So does Leber. So I think we just lock it up.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought. Oh, we'll see. If we could, that means, though, we sort of have to have warning ahead of time, right? We got to know.
We got to get the call.
And I don't know how that's set up. Then maybe we're counting on Jonny again to give us the heads up so that we can be there for that moment. Because it's a momentous occasion.
And then did they bring the new owners, like when Kurt Signetti got the football job at Indiana, they bring him to the halftime, and he gets to rile everybody up at the basketball game. Do they bring the current the owners that win? Do they get to go to the game and talk to the crowd that night?
Yeah.
So many unanswered questions.
I'll finish with 715 guy. Did you see the text?
No.
Dan praying for you. I think I'm going to be okay. I think, based on what we know. But I appreciate the kind words.
Thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers is what they like to say in the business. Tomorrow, it starts again at 3. Really good lineup, as I said. And we hope you'll watch. Well, I don't know you can watch, but you certainly can listen. And a lot more yet to come this week as well. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock right here on The Fan.
A lot of things that are easily correctable.